I'm John Hartness, and joining me today is the Fire Chicken. I'm showing this off because it's awesome. This is the Phoenix Award that was presented to me this year by Deep South Con and Liberty Con, and it was handcrafted by Leah Powell, who is one of the very few stained glass master artisans in the world. So it's incredible. Thank you, Leah. And you can find out more about this by following me on social media. Joining me today is Regina Kirby, who, in addition to being a Deep South Con Rebel Award winner and being the maven of con suites all over the Southeast for more years than either of us are interested in admitting, Regina's also the program director for Dragon Con. And in case you haven't heard of Dragon Con, good God, why are you even watching this YouTube series? Hell, you probably saw me at Dragon Con, and that's how you found out about this.
True.
But anyway, if you're not familiar, Dragon Con is one of a kind. There is no convention in the world like Dragon Con, and part of that's the way that it came into existence, which was kind of becoming a thing and then becoming another thing and then eating a thing and then buying like 17 hotels in downtown Atlanta, renting out the entire city for Labor Day weekend, and I'm exaggerating a little.
We do take up about 6 blocks.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chunk of downtown businesses where Labor Day is their Black Friday.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, y'all make the profit for multiple restaurants and bars, and a few bartenders at least in downtown Atlanta.
A few, yes. We have 7 main buildings that are hosting, and then we have about 12 overflows. So when John said 20 hotels, he wasn't really exaggerating that much.
And every floor of the America's Mart at this point?
No,
just 2 buildings?
It's 2. In building 2, we have like 4 floors. So because the comics and pop artist alley is over there, including comics programming.
Yes.
And a couple of floors for vendors.
You can find me there frequently at the Missing Volume, which is the badass con bookstore that I do signings at.
Absolutely, Glennis is fantastic. I work with her pretty closely every year to get those author signings in.
We'll get her on one of these events, on one of these videos, to talk about things writers screw up when they do bookstore signings.
Yes, yes.
But today we're going to talk about things writers screw up when they're applying to conventions or when they're at conventions and they want to be asked back.
Right.
Because you guys have a lot of guests.
We do.
400 or
400
so?
is our professed limit of guests, and we also have 200 or 300 attending professionals.
Yeah.
So.
And some of us, it depends on where you have an opening in your numbers, what we are that year.
Sometimes that is the case, but it also, obviously, there are certain people that are going to pull a few more than others.
Yes.
Larry Niven is a guest. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But there's, quite a bit that's, that we need our attending professionals. Obviously, we do have a lot of space to fill. Yeah. We have about 37 tracks of programming. And those not familiar with a track scheduling setup that's basically different fields of interest. So think Star Wars, Star Trek, writers, SF lit, fantasy lit,
sci-fi.
Military sci-fi, high fantasy lit, urban fantasy, diversity in science fiction, literature, horror, all of those things.
Alt history.
Yes, alt history kind of covers a lot of things, but it does have authors in it. Mm-hmm. There is actually a Dragon Award category for alternate history. So
also the Electronic Frontiers track frequently has writers.
They do, and in particular talking about the legal aspects, and particularly your online representation and how that's, there's an author here that actually speaks on it frequently.
Yeah.
So
Several of us. I've
yeah.
done a few. Gail's
Right.
done a lot, and Jim Nettles,
Jim Nettles.
who
Jim Nettles
you
is who I
will
think
see
of.
plenty of on this channel.
Yeah, he does a lot with our business stuff, and IP properties. In fact, he's going to do a couple of workshops for me
I
this
saw
year.
that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah,
He's very excited.
yeah. Good guy.
Really blows his skirt up to do workshops.
He likes to work hills.
Yeah,
But,
I've seen a lot of Jim's knees over the years.
But I will say too, it's not just DragonCon. I am pretty known throughout the South. I do a lot of not just con suites, but in guest services. I tend to gravitate to those things. I know a lot of people, and so.
I mean, you've booked me now at 2 different conventions.
Correct, yeah.
As different flavors
Yes.
of guest of honor
Yes.
type slots.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, it has happened that I have called John and said, hey, I need a favor.
The answer, by the way, when Regina calls and says, I have a favor, the answer is, yeah, okay. Do you want to know what the favor is? Not really.
Not really. I'm not gonna do you too wrong.
No, I mean, you're not going to ask me to do anything any more illegal than the stuff I do for fun. And
True.
You're not going to
And probably not even that far.
And you're not even going to ask me to do anything more embarrassing than serenading someone at opening ceremonies, which again, I do for free.
Which
And
did
if you
happen.
haven't seen that video,
Go check it out. It was quite amusing.
but when people are filling out their applications to come to any convention,
Yes.
Chattacon,
Mhm.
LibertyCon,
Mhm.
Con Carolinas, DragonCon, Congregate, where we are here,
Mhm.
what kind of things are you looking for, and what kind of things are, oh my God, no?
The first thing I would say is, one, know what kind of convention you're going to. There are different flavors. DragonCon tends to be like the whole Baskin Robbins 31 flavors, except it's like really 37. Many of the smaller conventions are a little bit more specialized.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you can bring something to the table, if they're a literary convention, you know, obviously they're going to look at more authors. If they're maybe, John and I were talking about, there was a particular convention that's focused on horror. So if that's your genre, then great. But don't go in thinking you're going to do romantic fantasy at a horror convention. That's just,
Yeah.
you know, that's not their audience. So play
StokerCon
to
is
it.
not booking Travis Baldry anytime soon.
Right,
We
exactly.
love Travis here on the channel, by the way.
However, it's just not their genre. So
Right.
that's the one thing. Kind of do a little research, understand what the convention is. If you're a new writer in specific, don't ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars. You're not going to get it. You will be disappointed because if I had to choose between
Larry Niven,
Larry Niven,
since we're name dropping Larry
Larry
on this
Niven.
episode.
and someone who's had a first year book, who am I going to choose?
You know,
You know, who is going to draw the more people in? Who are people going to be more interested in?
you know, I got stuck signing one time between Brandon Sanderson and Larry and Jerry Purnell.
So you kind of like sat back and handed them pens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did.
That happens. Yeah.
And like I do in anthologies, when I want to leech off more famous writers in anthologies, I just leech fans out of their lines.
Sure.
Like, hey, you back there, it's going to be an hour before you get to talk to Larry. Why don't you come up and look at my stuff?
Are you
Shoot.
interested in mine? That'd
Yeah,
be
they'll
great.
hold your spot.
Yeah, that's the first thing. So you should know what you're applying for, to you know, have realistic expectations. I do a lot of smaller conventions still. One, I love them, but two, I check people out. You
Mhm.
know, I'm going to see how you behave. Are you a good speaker? Do you engage with fans?
How do you treat the people that you don't know are important?
Oh, that's a whole nother point. That's another point I want to make. Know who's in the room. If you're at a smaller convention, you may not know who I am. You may not now because you're watching this podcast. But I have
didn't.
worked many a con suite, and I am back behind the scenes chopping up vegetables or whatever, or making sandwiches. because I enjoy that. I enjoy feeding people, and that's how I kind of came up in fandom. But I have seen younger writers make mistakes, and I have been there, and how they handle those mistakes, that may temper whether I choose to invite them to another convention and looking at their application for a bigger convention like DragonCon. You have to understand that you know, DragonCon's the show, to use a baseball term.
Yeah.
And so you get to the show by doing your due diligence in the smaller conventions.
Well, I think we had probably done 4 or 5 conventions together.
Yes.
Before we actually ever met.
Yes.
And you may have known who I was because
Right.
you were doing your work.
Right. I'm
But-
sitting in the back of the room going, okay, that was funny.
Yeah.
Okay. They were engaging. Oh, he can moderate. That's a skill set.
Mhm.
And that's something that I look for. And
But I think we met in the Con Suite at Liberty, probably.
possibly. They kind of run together sometimes. But
Yeah.
I will say that. One other thing I will say is, and I tell this to everyone, write a good short bio. And a short bio, I'm going to define this because some people do not seem to understand what a short bio is. And it is between 30 and 50 words. It is your elevator speech. If you can't do that in the time that it would take you to get on an elevator and get 10 floors, it's too long.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to hear is you're an American author from Iowa, born in 1953. What I want to hear is New York Times best-selling, USA Today best-selling,
Compton Crook Award winner.
Compton Crook Award winner, whatever award, if you're an award-winning author, that's great. Put that on there. And then I need to know what you've written. Because if your name is a common name in particular, I'm just going to say Joe Brown. When I go to Amazon to look you up to see how many books you have, there might be 6 Joe Browns. Which one are you?
We have that with one of our authors that's here, Sarah Adams.
Correct.
Well, she writes specifically as Sarah Joy Adams because there is a sweet romance author, Sarah Adams.
Exactly. And so Kevin J. Anderson, same thing.
Yeah.
And he's very particular about saying Kevin J. Anderson because there's some other people out there.
Well, and I use my middle initial professionally because my
Right.
father and I had the same first and last name but different middle names.
Right.
So
Exactly.
just when, and we all, until he passed, we lived relatively close
Right.
together. So I got a lot of mail for John R.
Sure,
Harkness.
sure.
And that
Luckily,
is not,
you could just run it over.
yeah, fortunately it was all right.
But what I need is something that's going to catch my attention, be professionally written. I like a little quirkiness, but the quirkiness doesn't overshadow the professionalism.
That's good because mine says that some people call me Maurice because I speak
I know.
of the competence of love.
I know, but that actually was something that caught my attention. And I was like, oh, he's funny. Okay, let me go look at him further. Because understand that guest committees, these are all people that have real lives. They're doing this as their hobby. So they might go any further than that, than that short bio. So if they're looking to fill a specific niche, they have a few panels that they need an extra person on, and it's a choice between you and someone else, you gotta give them a reason to want you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the things, like I said, knowing who's in the room. I have seen a lot of crash and burns from people who don't know who's in the room. I've heard a lot of people try to tell others what DragonCon is and what they're about.
I've been going to DragonCon for 10 years,
Yeah.
or more than 10 years at this point, and I could sit here for half an hour and try to explain DragonCon.
DragonCon is different for every person from their perspective
Yeah.
because we are so large and we cover so many different things.
So what's one more thing that writers need to know, or anyone who's applying for conventions, what's one more thing that they'll do that,
Well, like I said, the part of the thing with me being in connecting conventions, be nice. Be nice to everyone. And because you don't know, like I said, who else is in that room and who is watching. And convention committees talk. I get calls. Mr. Harkness has called me, and I called Mr. Harkness and said, hey, you just had so-and-so at your convention. Were they a good guest? Were they a okay guest? Or were they a, oh dear God, I never had him back again?
yeah,
Because, and those things, those dear God, I will never have them again, they follow you. They will follow you for years if you do it more than once. Everybody gets a one-off.
yeah.
Everybody understands that you have a bad day. But if you're not, and particularly if you're not respectful of the fans, hit your marks. If you have accepted that you are going to be on a panel at a certain time, be on time. And on time is 5 minutes early.
And sober.
And sober. Yeah, if you cannot realistically operate when you are not, then you should not be disrespectful of the fans by wasting their time. They have come to see you.
Yeah.
And they come to see you because hopefully they've read your books. And if they haven't read your books yet, Mike Resnick made this statement in a Cephalon bulletin, and he's like, I wasn't going to DragonCon, and Mike was actually the most winning author for short stories of Hugo's. He won 5. He was nominated like 20 times.
Yeah, holds the record for nominations and wins.
And wins. And he had not been to DragonCon, and we were really trying to get the literary tracks back on track. And he came and he said he was very suspicious because he thought of us as a media convention. And then he found out we had all of these literary tracks. But he had people, he did panels, and he had people come up to him as long as he had been in the industry, 40 years, who came up and said, I've never heard of you before, where can I get your books?
And with
Because
Mike Resnick,
of
the
that
answer is
panel.
literally everywhere.
Because of that panel. He's like, well, I'm actually going to a signing at Missing Volume.
Yeah.
So come with me. And he said, people who may have discounted it before, don't. You don't know what you're saying on this panel and how you're contributing to this conversation might say, hey, he seemed pretty cool.
I think
Or
that
I think I may, let me check this out.
I think that as of this year, I'm in 4 or 5 anthologies specifically off of relationships I've made with people at DragonCon.
Right.
Both of, I mean, I got to be friends with Jonathan Mayberry hanging out at DragonCon.
Yeah.
I got to know Laurel
And he
K.
does
Hamilton.
Weird Tales.
Yeah,
so.
Jonathan runs Weird Tales. And,
Yeah, so.
and he's the editor for 2 anthologies that I'm in later this year.
Right.
I did one for Laurel K. Hamilton, and I met Laurel at Dragon. And
you never know what those new projects that they're working on, and if they have a good interaction with you, then they may keep you in mind. You know, they're like, hey, so what are you writing?
yeah,
You know, I think, well, I know for a fact that you and I have been friends for longer than I have been reading your stuff.
oh yeah,
Because of our interactions at conventions.
Sure.
And I was like, oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. And then of course you got more and more into Falstaff. And I've seen you bring in some other authors, and you know, occasionally would say, hey, have you read any of their stuff? Because they're pretty good, you know, they're coming along. They've only got a couple books, but in a year or 2, maybe.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, don't get your feelings hurt if you don't get in the first couple of years, particularly if you don't have at least 5 books in print.
I think it was my 3rd application
Right.
when I got in.
So I'm just saying.
Maybe.
But I will say, honestly, if I've seen you somewhere, that's going to count. I have a little bit more understanding of who you are and whether you would be a good fit and whether, you know, all
And
those
you know,
kind of
if
things.
you're walking through the lobby at a smallish Atlanta con and somebody waves you over and you come and you sit down and you hang out for 2 hours one night with me and you and Glennis and Terry and
That's happened
and then,
recently.
and then all of a sudden the next week, that author who was the guest of honor at that convention posts, "Hey, I'll be at Dragon Con this year."
Yeah, don't know how that happened. Yeah, but yes, I did have those conversations do happen.
Yeah.
And like I said, Jim in particular, Jim's been coming for years. Under a different pseudonym. He also writes under a different name. He writes under Jim McDonald, as well as Nettles.
He's got one name for fiction and one for nonfiction.
Right, and he does a lot of business writing.
And I can't keep them track.
And I communicate obviously a lot through email, and so there are times when suddenly it's like, oh yeah, well I've been talking to you for 5 years, but we've just met in person.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and
just happened to us downstairs.
Yeah, in fact, Jim Nettles in particular, AJ Hartley, same thing. I went to JordanCon, and I specifically went to Authors Show because I wanted to put name with face, because we've been having a back and forth conversation about some programming, and I was just like, oh, he's going to be there. I'm going to go introduce myself. And I was like, hey.
Yeah.
Are you AJ Hartley? Because I have to keep writing this letter for you every day here for your college. How you doing? Cause
just happened downstairs with Stuart
correct.
Jaffe.
I've been communicating with him for a decade.
Yeah.
So and I was like, I think that's who that is.
But
but when you're running a convention, you don't get to see as much.
We're friends.
Yeah.
We've got each other's real phone numbers and that.
Right. Exactly.
But I think I've talked to you at Dragon maybe twice.
And it's more like hello, goodbye.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, how are you? Give me a hug. Okay, gotta get somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on my way to check on something else. I see a lot of Dragon Con on YouTube and our streaming service because I am at that point I'm working and it's problem solving.
Yeah.
So,
it's like people getting a piece of me at Con Carolinas.
Correct.
Exactly. In the past few years.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm glad you're here. Did you have a good time? Great. I'll look forward to your application in November. But like I said, if the bio is a really good starting point, I have had authors that I know that have, quite frankly, come up to me and said, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, okay, it's I've applied 5 times and I can't get in. And I was like, let me see your short bio. Who, buddy? Yeah. We need to work on this. And he's like, and one of them in particular was like, do you mind if I send you some drafts? And I said, I don't mind because I'm in off season right now. Don't talk to me 30 days before Dragon Con. That's, you'll get yes or no answers.
I get that from a lot of newer writers. How do I get into Dragon Con? Mm-hmm. My thing that I tell everybody first off is, well, you don't start at Dragon.
No, you don't.
Start at all of the
go to your local convention.
Yeah, go to your local
something that
convention.
Is close to you.
And then I tell them, go to smaller conventions in Atlanta and within 2 hours of Atlanta, because a lot of the track directors go to other cons, volunteer at other cons, they'll see you, they like you, they know you.
Do also, specifically at larger conventions, go and introduce yourself to whoever is running that room, whoever that track director is, and tell them, give them your phone number, cards, good name, cards, that has your phone number on it. Specifically for this networking purpose is say, hey, if somebody has to cancel at the last minute, these are the things that I'm really good about talking about. They may just give you that call.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody's sick. I now have an opening.
There was a death in the family and so-and-so had to leave.
Had to leave, yes. And if you're still interested, I've got a spot open. Take that spot.
My Thursday every year is walking first-time riders around and making sure they
Know where things are.
Nancy and Sue and Suska and
Right.
and
Carol,
Carol
yeah.
and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
folks that run rider-centric tracks,
Right.
because
Right. Apocalypse Rising, if you're doing,
Yeah.
those kind of,
things happen. and
things happen. I mean, it's real life, and it just happens. Their flight was late, and suddenly, they're delayed 4 hours, and you literally might get that call, and it's like, hey, it's in 30 minutes. Can you make it here? If you can't, it's okay.
Yeah.
But if you can take that opportunity, that gives them a chance to see you in action, and just be ready to go. I mean, look professional, behave professionally. It's fine to kid around with your friends, but if you're there in a professional capacity, then act it. Because that gets around too.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, it would be great if they, had not shown up in full pirate regalia when it's not about pirates.
or just straight up loaded.
Yes, and that has happened too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's all back to me with respect for the fans.
Yeah.
So, they paid to be here. You may have paid to be there if it's a smaller convention and you're first starting out. You may get a reduced rate. You may not, depends on how small the con is and but you're doing your time in the trenches to, one, learn how to panel. And there is a way to do it and a way not to do it. Learn to be a moderator. A moderator is not the picture, it's the frame. They are the people that are keeping the conversation going, and it's not about you.
Yeah.
So if you're really about wanting to get your information out there, moderation may not be your thing.
Yeah.
But if you're really good at talking to other people and bringing them out and making sure that that everyone gets to talk, because let's face facts, we've all been at panels where one person dominates the conversation, and sometimes that's okay.
I'm trying to get better.
You're pretty good. You've been working on it. But sometimes that's what the audience is there for.
Right. If you're at a small con and there's two of you plus the guest of honor.
Right. The guest of honor is going to talk most. That's just what it is, because that's what who's everybody there to see. If you're a collaborator, particularly if you're a newer author and you're collaborating with this more established author, they're going to be more interested in the established, but you should try to get some salient points in there so that people start going, oh, I understand now why they wanted to work together.
Yeah.
But just be cognizant, and like I said, know who's around you, because yes, there have been plenty of times that I've been in a room and gone,
I'll remember
no.
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh no, yeah.
All right. Well, Regina, thank you for taking a little bit of
Sure,
time to
absolutely,
hang
Doug.
out with me and the Fire Chicken and our friends
The Fire
here on
Chicken.
the internet.
Yes.
If I don't see you between now and Labor Day weekend, I probably won't see you Labor Day weekend either,
Probably,
except for 30 seconds to give you a hug,
right,
if we're lucky.
right, exactly. But we will see each other, we talk all the time, so.
We do, and we'll
yeah.
have all weekend together in January at
That's
Chattacon.
correct, yeah. John's
So,
gonna be our special guest.
Come
so-
join me and Regina
Yeah.
and Mary Robin at Coal at Chattacon in
Yes.
January 2024.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.